After the movie was over, it suddenly came to us that Cherry and Marcia didn't have a way to get home. Two-Bit gallantly offered to walk them home. The west side of town was only about 20 miles away, but they wanted to call their parents and have them come get them. Two-Bit finally talked them into letting us drive them home in his car. I think they were still half scared of us. They were getting over it, though, as we walked to Two-Bit's house to pick up the car. It seemed funny to me that Socias, if these girls were any example, were just like us. They liked the Beatles and thought Elvis Presley was out, and we thought the Beatles were rank and that Elvis was tough, but that seemed the only difference to me. Of course, greasy girls would have acted a lot tougher, but there was a basic sameness. I thought maybe it was the money that separated us. No, Cherry said slowly when I said this. It's not just money. Part of it is, but not all. You greasers have a different set of values. You're more emotional. We're sophisticated, cool to the point of not feeling anything. Nothing is real with us. You know, sometimes I'll catch myself talking to a girlfriend and I'll realize I don't mean half of what I'm saying. I don't really think a beer blast on the river bottom is super cool, but I'll rave about one to a girlfriend just to be saying something. She smiled at me. I've never told anyone that. I think you're the first person I've ever really gotten through to. She was coming through to me all right, probably because I was a greaser and younger. She didn't have to keep her guard up with me. Rat race is the perfect name for it, she said. We're always going and going and going and never asking where. Did you ever hear of having more than you wanted so that you couldn't want anything else and then you started looking for something else to want? It seems like we're always searching for something to satisfy us and never finding it. Maybe if we could lose our cool, we could. That was the truth. Socias were always behind a wall of aloofness, careful not to let their real selves show through. I had seen a social club rumble once. The Socias even fought coldly and practically and impersonally. Well, that's why we're separated, I said. It's not money, it's feeling. You don't feel anything, and we feel too violently. And, she was trying to hide a smile, that's probably why we take turns getting our names in the paper. Two-Bit and Marcia weren't even listening to us. They were engaged in some wild conversation that made no sense to anyone but themselves. I have quite a rep for being quiet, almost as quiet as Johnny. Two-Bit always said he wondered why Johnny and I were such good buddies. He must make such interesting conversation, he'd say, cocking one eyebrow. You keeping your mouth shut and Johnny not saying anything. But Johnny and I understood each other without saying anything. Nobody but Soda could really get me talking. Till I met Cherry Valance. I don't know why I could talk to her, maybe for the same reason she could talk to me. First thing I knew, I was telling her about Mickey Mouse, Soda's horse. I'd never told anyone about Soda's horse. It was personal. Soda had this buckskin horse, only it wasn't his. It belonged to a guy who kept it at the stables where Soda used to work. Mickey Mouse was Soda's horse, though. First day Soda saw him, he said, "There's my horse," and I never doubted it. I was about 10 then. Soda Pop is horse crazy, I mean it. He's always hanging around stables and rodeos, hopping on a horse every time he gets a chance. When I was 10, I thought that Mickey Mouse and Soda looked alike and were alike. Mickey Mouse was a dark gold buckskin, sassy and ornery, not much more than a colt. He'd come when Soda called him. He wouldn't come for anyone else. That horse loved Soda. He'd stand there and chew on Soda's sleeve or collar. Gosh, but Soda Pop was crazy about that horse. He went down to see him every day. Mickey Mouse was a mean horse. He kicked other horses and was always getting into trouble. "I got me an ornery pony," Soda would tell him, rubbing his neck. "How come you're so mean, Mickey Mouse?" Mickey Mouse would just chew on his sleeve and sometimes nip him, but not hard. He may have belonged to another guy, but he was Soda's horse. "Does Soda still have him?" Cherry asked. "He got sold," I said. "They came and they got him one day and took him off. He was a real valuable horse, pure quarter." She didn't say anything else, and I was glad. I couldn't tell her that Soda had bawled all night after they came and got Mickey Mouse. I had cried too, if you want to know the truth, because Soda never really wanted anything except a horse, and he'd lost his. Soda had been 12 then, going on 13. He never let on to Mom and Dad how he felt, though, because we never had enough money, and usually we had a hard time making ends meet. When you're 13 in our neighborhood, you know the score. I kept saving my money for a year, thinking that someday I could buy Mickey Mouse back for Soda. You're not so smart at 10. "You read a lot, don't you, Pony Boy?" Cherry asked. I was startled. "Yeah, why?" She kind of shrugged. "I could just tell. I bet you watch sunsets, too." She was quiet for a moment after I nodded. "I used to watch them, too, before I got so busy." I pictured that, or tried to. Maybe Cherry stood still and watched the sunset while she was supposed to be taking the garbage out. Stood there and watched and forgot everything else until her big brother screamed at her to hurry up. I shook my head. It seemed funny to me that the sunset she saw from her patio and the one I saw from my back steps was the same one. Maybe the two different worlds we lived in weren't so different. We saw the same sunset Marcia suddenly gasped, "Cherry, look what's coming." We all looked and saw a blue Mustang coming down the street. Johnny made a small noise in his throat, and when I looked at him, he was white. Marcia was shifting nervously. "What are we going to do?" Cherry bit a fingernail. "Stand here," she said. "There isn't much else we can do." "Who is it?" Two-Bit asked. "The FBI?" "No," Cherry said bleakly. "It's Randy and Bob." "Your boyfriends?" Johnny's voice was steady, but standing as close to him as I was, I could see he was trembling. I wondered why. Johnny was a nervous wreck, but he was never that jumpy. Cherry started walking down the street. "Maybe they won't see us. Act normal." "Who's acting?" Two-Bit grinned. "I'm a natural normal." "Wish it was the other way around," I muttered, and Two-Bit said, "Don't get mouthy, pony boy." The Mustang passed us slowly and went right on by. Marcia sighed in relief. "That was close." Cherry turned to me. "Tell me about your oldest brother. You don't talk much about him." I tried to think of something to say about Derry and shrugged. "What's to talk about? He's big and handsome and likes to play football." "I mean, what's he like? I feel like I know Soda from the way you talk about him. Tell me about Derry." And when I was silent, she urged me on. "Is he wild and reckless like Soda? Dreamy like you?" My face got hot as I bit my lip. "Derry? What was Derry like?" I started to say he was a good old guy, but I couldn't. I burst out bitterly. "He's not like Soda Pop at all, and he sure ain't like me. He's as hard as a rock and about as human. He's got eyes exactly like frozen ice. He thinks I'm a pain in the neck. He likes Soda. Everybody likes Soda, but he can't stand me. I bet he wishes he could stick me in a home somewhere, and he'd do it too if Soda had let him." Two-Bit and Johnny were staring at me now. "Nah," Two-Bit said dumbfounded. "Nah, pony boy, that ain't right. You got it wrong." "Gee," Johnny said softly, "I thought you and Derry and Soda got along well." "Well, we don't," I snapped, feeling silly. I knew my ears were red by the way that they were burning, and I was thankful for the darkness. I felt stupid. Compared to Johnny's home, mine was heaven. At least Derry didn't get drunk and beat me up or run me out of the house, and I had Soda Pop to talk things over with. That made me mad. I mean, making a fool of myself in front of everyone. "And you can shut your trap, Johnny K, because we all know you ain't wanted at home either, and you can't blame them." Johnny's eyes went round, and he winced as though I'd belted him. Two-Bit slapped me a good one across the side of the head and hard. "Shut your mouth, kid. If you wasn't Soda's kid brother, I'd beat the tar out of you. You know better than to talk to Johnny like that." He put his hand on Johnny's shoulder. "He didn't mean it, Johnny." "I'm sorry," I said miserably. "Johnny was my buddy. I was just mad." "It's the truth," Johnny said with a bleak grin. "I don't care." "Stop talking like that," Two-Bit said fiercely, messing up Johnny's hair. "We couldn't get along without you, so you can just shut up." "It ain't fair," I cried passionately. "It ain't fair that we have all the rough breaks." I didn't know exactly what I meant, but I was thinking about Johnny's father being a drunk and his mother being a selfish slob, and Two-Bit's mother being a barmaid to support him and his kid sister after their father ran out on them, and Dally, wild, cunning Dally, turning into a hoodlum because he'd die if he didn't, and Steve, his hatred for his father coming out in his soft, bitter voice and the violence of his temper. Soda Pop, a dropout so he could get a job and keep me in school, and Derry, getting old before his time, trying to run a family and hold on to 2 jobs and never having any fun. While the Socias had so much spare time and money that they jumped us and each other for kicks, had beer blasts and river bottom parties because they didn't know what else to do. Things were rough all over, all right. All over the east side. Just didn't seem right to me.